Hello, I'm Toru Nishigaki, Professor Emeritus of the University of Tokyo, Japan. Section 1, Merit and Demerit of Generative Artificial Intelligence. First, I thank you for giving me the chance to participate in this meaningful project, Cybernetics to Come, the second phase of cybernetics for the 21st century. I have been engaged in the research of information studies for over 50 years. I have begun my career as a computer engineer, then enlarged my research scope, and currently I'm studying the fundamental concepts of information technologies and their social or cultural influences from the philosophical viewpoint. Today, I'd like to talk about the informatic turn, which may be caused by the generative artificial intelligence, AI, appeared a few years ago, and its desirable orientation. The generative AI is a technology which can generate automatically natural language statements, as well as music and pictures. Recently, an interactive generative AI such as ChatGPT has been attracting a lot of worldwide attentions. The ChatGPT developed by OpenAI was made public at the end of 2022, and it rapidly attained over 100 million users at the beginning of 2023. When inputting some questions of information retrieval, it immediately returns an answer by smooth and grammatically correct statement in not only English, but in various natural language, including Japanese. In addition to information retrieval, ChatGPT helps make abstraction, translation, and even programming. A lot of people believe, because of such usefulness, that a computer has at last acquired higher intelligence than a human being. Positive evaluation of generative AI is prevailing, especially in the Japanese industry, since it is expected to increase product efficiency by speeding up standard statement compositions. The meeting of Japanese Prime Minister Kishida and OpenAI CEO Sam Altman in April 2023 is considered a symbolic event. On the other hand, however, the output of ChatGPT sometimes includes evident fallacies, and it may scatter disinformation and discriminatory remarks. Furthermore, it may infringe on privacy or copyright, where the generative AI gains its ability by learning an enormous amount of data in the internet. So there is a strong claim in EU countries that the use of generative AI should be strictly regulated by laws to avoid social or political disturbance. Opinions that the development of generative AI needs more prudence have been expressed even by IT experts in the United States. In short, the generative AI has both merits and demerits. How should we regard it, and how to make the best of it? One thing we predict for certain is that the generative AI will soon cause a drastic social or cultural change. It is an aspect of an informatic turn which corresponds to the metamorphosis based on information. Here, information is usually limited to mean only mechanical information, so-called data. Namely, the society becomes operated mechanically, driven by high-speed data processing. Is this kind of metamorphosis desirable? Before applying the generative AI quickly, I think we need to radically reconsider the concept of the informatic turn and redefine what it should be like. Let us look back at the history of AI in order to get an insight into the essence and limitation of generative AI. The ChatGPT is obviously one of the main achievements of the third AI boom in late 2010s. The first boom, whose keyword was logic, appeared in 1950 to 60s. And automatic logical reasoning was seen as an intelligent computer activities. Then the second boom arrived in 1980s, whose keyword was knowledge. Researchers tried to let computers do expert-like reasoning by combining medical or legal knowledge propositions automatically. The first and second AI boom were relying on Western traditional metaphysics. That is, the cosmic worlds consist of objects, absolute entities, which obey the static logical order. Accordingly, the composition of the world's strict description could lead to an accurate conclusion, namely the truth. But in fact, AI's conclusion, whether in medical or legal reasoning, inevitably included errors, many errors. The ambiguity of the responsibility for those errors made actual application of AI very difficult. The second boom, therefore, diminished before the end of the 20th century. It is noteworthy that the key word of the third AI boom is statistics. The boom has been brought about by so-called deep learning technology, which enables to process data statistically and recognize patterns efficiently. For instance, a Google research team succeeded in letting an AI program recognize the image of a cat after studying about 10 million YouTube moving pictures. Note that statistical results are not always accurate and naturally yields a certain number of errors. But the improvement of efficiency has led to positive evaluation, as even a human being cannot avoid making errors. In spite of that, we should not forget that the technological purpose of AI has shifted here, because the AI originally had aimed at obtaining a correct answer automatically. This causes the problem that who is to take the responsibility of an incorrect decision? The side effect of the generative AI like ChatGPT, especially, ought not to be neglected, as it often produces false statements. The technical purpose of an interactive generative AI is to attain user-friendliness rather than logical correctness. It tries to persuade general people by producing a plausible statement, easy to understand. Since general people believe in the authority of AI, false messages may spread quickly. The falseness and incorrectness made an interactive generative AI mostly come from its inability to understand the content of a statement. The drawbacks of a computer that it cannot connect a sign with its meaning or the symbol grounding problem, nor it can grasp context, the frame problem, have long been indicated since the first and second AI booms. The AI, for example, does not understand the owner's feeling for a pet cat, even though it can recognize its picture. Briefly, the AI as a machine can hardly get the meaning of an object. Then, who can understand the meaning? A living thing. The meaning is nothing but the value, significance for a living thing. Each living thing survives by selecting the object which has a meaning for it, and by constructing its own particular real world. It is noteworthy that cybernetics has been, from its beginning, the intelligence, the know-how for the living things to survive. The neocybernetics, originated by Heinz von Foerster in the 1970s and developed by Umberto Maturana, Francisco Varela, and Niklas Luhmann, and so on, has been pursuing a theoretical argument from the viewpoint of the meaning related to a living thing. Based on the autopoiesis theory proposed by Maturana and Varela, a living thing is defined as a different system from a machine. And these two are distinguished clearly. The former is termed an autopoietic system, and the latter an allopoietic system. Therefore, it is impossible to consider a human mental activity to be identical to AI data processing. Standing on such a viewpoint, we can find a new direction to reconsider the informatic turn through recapturing the notion of information and make it cause a desirable change for the 21st century by surpassing mere mechanical data processing. Thus, a gate to evade mechanization of a human being could be opened. Section 2, communication and propagation. The information study described as such, called fundamental information, FI, is currently under construction by our research project. Its contents have already been introduced by research colleague Daisuke Harashima's online lecture in the first phase of cybernetics for the 21st century. Please refer to it for the details of the FI. In this lecture, I'm going to simply summarize FI's three theoretical features. The first feature is that the FI insists on grasping information widely from the viewpoint of living things. Information in the wide sense is called life information. And what expresses its meaning using symbols is called social information, which corresponded to the information in a common narrow sense. When a symbol is treated independently for efficient transmission and handling, there emerges the information in the narrowest sense, that is, mechanical information. Digital data are a typical example of mechanical information. Here, an inclusion property can be seen conceptually as follows. Life information includes social information, and social information includes mechanical information. For example, if you eat rotten food, you get life information of unpleasant pain. You transmit to a doctor your symptom, such as stomach ache, which is social information. The doctor diagnoses that you got food poisoning and inputs to an electric chart the digital mechanical information corresponding to the disease and medicine. But a computer cannot handle its meaning, as the information defined by the communication engineer Claude Shannon is limited to be mechanical one. You may appeal to ChatGPT that you are suffering from food poisoning and may receive sympathetic response, but actually, it never understands your pain at all. Confusion among three types of information gives rise to the overtrust inside generative AI. Here, we encounter a theoretical problem. The pain is a kind of life information emerges in the body of a living thing, namely in an autopoietic system, which is a closed system acting in a recursive and self-referencing manner. In principle, therefore, it is impossible to transmit the pain directly to other autopoietic systems. Naturally, your pain cannot be understood by other people. An autopoietic system is conceptually inconsistent with the notion of information transmission. Then, how could we build up a model of social information transmission in a medical care and other sympathetic conversation between human beings? The second feature of FY presents a model termed hierarchical autonomous communication system, HACS, which aims at solving this hard problem. Although all autopoietic systems are seen at an equal level in the conventional autopoiesis theory, HACS introduces a hierarchy among them, which is the essential point of the model. I omit these details, but just think of a social system of a company, for example. The autopoietic mind systems of employees are set under the autopoietic company system. In a company meeting, discussions are carried out autonomously when communications are being made using attending employees' remarks as resources. The minutes is its output. Attending employees can think of anything freely in the essentially autonomous mind, but they cannot actually say whatever irrelevant to the meeting agenda under the constraints of the upper system, the company. And the continuous communication based on participants' remarks could be regarded as social information transmission in the meeting. Naturally, a remarks of a speaker may be misunderstood by some listeners, and it is not sure that every meaning of words is transmitted correctly. In general, however, if the proceedings advance smoothly, information transmission can be considered successful. It is almost the same as that even if an email is sent correctly, its 100% content may not be understood by a receiver. Human beings, unlike other creatures, have such an aspect of heteronomous allopoetic systems in their social behaviors. Although they are basically autonomous autopoetic systems, the evidence is that they keep living while obeying various rules, such as laws. The investigation in this duality, autonomy and heteronomy, is crucial in the analysis of social impact caused by the generative AI. If things go wrong, a human being may be robbed of freedom and made mechanical existence under the orders of an allopoetic machine. Next, I'm going to talk about the focus on propagation, the third feature of the FI. Unlike communication, which is a synchronic concept, propagation is a diachronic concept. The communication is the structure happening generated instantaneously. The propagation, on the other hand, is an historical occurrence, emerges during long time. It may help understand, for example, that the former is related to the structuralism, the latter communism. In brief, the propagation represents the dissemination of long-term values or semantic structures caused by accumulated communications. The value system shared by people change by the propagation in a society. The state of communication can be analyzed by Huck's model, but as for large metamorphosis, it needs to be analyzed by focusing on propagation. We can know the conclusion of companies' meeting by watching generated communications, but we cannot know the long-term change of companies' management philosophy or values without investigating propagation. For example, most companies nowadays have the idea that promotion rules should be equal for men and women. But it was not about 50 years ago. The notion has gradually been disseminated in Japanese society. Will the way of propagation change by the arrival of the generative AI? This is a problem to solve. Section 3, impact of generative AI on propagation. Today, Internet information has already been utilized actively. It is common that the remarks of an employee attending a meeting are based on retrieved Internet information. But the state of communication in society is expected to drastically change along with the prevalence of generative AI. Such a situation may happen that a chatbot attends a meeting and speaks on the display in a meeting room. If its remarks gain positive reactions, they may give an impact on discussion. And in the long run, propagations may occur led by an interactive generative AI. An interactive generative AI like ChatGPT is surely able to join in human conversation as it produces human-like statements. But let us think over what kind of processing is executed in a computer. An interactive generative AI is mostly based on so-called large language model, LLM. This is a technology developed in late 2010s, which produces word sequences found at a high probability by learning enormous amount of language data. That is, it connects the words with high correlation through statistical analysis and put them together according to grammar. This process is purely syntactic, and the semantics and the intention of a statement are out of concern, although it pays attention to the relations among word meaning in the dictionary. What it does is the production of common word sequences told in the past following a given algorithm. Nevertheless, LLM has achieved surprisingly noteworthy level in the sense that it can yield familiar statements with rare grammatical errors. It has seemingly enough ability to attend a conversation among human beings. But we should not ignore that LLM is not concerned with the context of a statement, especially with the remark intention of it or the sense impression. Here lies the essence of generative AI's inability of remark understanding. Some LLM researchers claim that an interactive generative AI has acquired the ability of remark understanding because it can correctly answer a TV quiz, but it's nothing but an overestimation. Since a generative AI cannot grasp context, its output cannot exclude fatal errors against facts nor discriminatory expressions. In addition, the bigger problem is that the generative AI could hardly make remarks to cope with a new, unimaginable situation, since it only works depending on past data. It would be useless, for instance, to find out how people should behave for coronavirus pandemic. This difference is important because a human being, as a living thing, makes efforts to survive in any unexpected situation. Not only obeying given heteronomous rules, but a human being tries to think out and decide how to behave autonomously through making creative remarks. On the other hand, the remarks of generative AI are useful at most to take effective action in a stable situation. Consequently, we ought not to consider the interactive generative AI as someone having a personality while it attends a conversation. Then, where should we set it to be? Arashima proposed to regard it as a kind of media. Let us remember here that in neocybernetics, the concept of media has been expanded. Usually they are seen as technical tools to transmit mechanical information like email and telephone, but sociologist Nicholas Luhmann designated media as those which help realize semantic ordering of communication. In his well-known functionally differentiated social system theory, so-called airfogs medium, such as money, truth, political power, and so on, each bring about logical connection between communications and embody various social systems. The argument of Harashima, based on the concept of a folks medium, tries to expand the media concept still further. Instead of regarding generative AI as a human-like personality, he considers it as media which give an order to human communications. That is, the generative AI becomes an efficient support tool to realize the propagation for social value change which can be carried out by human thinking. Here, we can find his evident conviction that nothing but human autonomous mind system could create new values in the unknown environment. Nevertheless, nobody yet knows the concrete way how to use the generative AI as a helpful support. Detailed investigations will be necessary hereafter. At present, general people are not inclined to define clearly the difference between machines and human beings, and they hesitate to see the generative AI as a kind of media, essentially different from human beings. One of the reasons for it is probably some IT experts who are transhumanists insist that generative AI has or will soon have the intelligence superior to human beings because it can process big data very rapidly. The biggest issue is that generative AI has an appealing familiarity for general people. Various technology relating AI used to be utilized in such areas as machine translation, automated driving, marketing, and so on, but they were not close to ordinary people, far from ordinary people. Until recently, the information retrieval from internet needed the efforts to input keywords and understand its output. But now, for any question in natural language, an interactive generative AI immediately answers in easy statement. Suddenly, AI has become a close and convenient tool. Therefore, the generative AI has a strong and active influence on human communication. It may have worked as passive media when you simply wanted to pick up some pieces of internet information for making remarks. The generative AI, however, creates an illusion that it is a real teacher with high intelligence based on data analysis. Accordingly, people who are ignorant of computer processing tend to believe in and give hasty credit to the generative AI. It is very probable that for this reason, general people begin to think or judge less for themselves because they can easily get answers from an interactive generative AI. Such a temptation may cause distorted propagations and consequently may invite an undesirable informatic turn in social and cultural context. Section 4, Desirable Informatic Turn. Before considering the desirable informatic turn, let us remember the linguistic turn happened in the 20th century. As is well known, it is based on structural linguistics led by Ferdinand Saussure. Here we can find the notion that language creates the world. This denies the notion that language expressions represent the pre-given world, which is composed of absolute objects. Rather, it claims that the objects in the world emerge with language expressions. It was a drastic change not only in linguistics, but also in philosophy. In the West, it was traditionally considered that God created the world, which should be described correctly by intelligent thinking. However, the new notion claims that language expressions build up the world through articulation. Logical positivism and analytic philosophy have been led by the idea that we can grasp the world correctly by analyzing words logically. Academicians often understand the concept of linguistic turn in this narrow sense. Nevertheless, what is important is not limited to this academic argument. The linguistic turn gave great political as well as cultural impact on the whole Earth. The reason is it made clear that there exist diverse words depending on languages such as Japanese, Chinese, English, French, and so on. From the viewpoint of social propagation, it is essential to consider the linguistic turn in this wider sense. Namely, the linguistic turn caused a great value change in the 20th century. In this regard, anthropologist Claude Lévi-Strauss played an important role. It is believed to be the highest good undoubtedly in Western modernism that the recognition and acquired knowledge of the unique world bring about progress of civilization. According to such values, the world views of Asia and Africa were thought to be delayed and incorrect, so the people there needed to be enlightened. The modernism like this was completely denied by Lévi-Strauss. The unique worldview built by Western language like French or English does not have authority, absolute authority anymore. The worldviews built by various non-Western languages, Japanese or Chinese or Korean or other Asian African languages, each have authenticity and correctness respectively. Multiple words can be positioned relatively. This is the postmodernism brought about by the structuralism or post-structuralism, where we find innovative values that respect every culture on the earth. The informatic turn in the 21st century ought to be a positive extension of the linguistic turn of the 20th century. Namely, not merely language, but also various types of information coming from living body activities are considered to build up the world. In traditional Asian African societies, diverse types of information such as music, pictures, dance, and so on play essential roles. The real world will become poor if they are ignored. Accordingly, computer technology like AI has to work as media promoting a rich informatic turn. Is the current generative AI, however, holding such an informatic turn? On the contrary, it seems to damage the innovative value brought about by the linguistic turn. It is going to destroy diverse worldviews introduced by Lévi-Strauss in the name of global economic development and technological progress, which leads to the revival of one-dimensional Western modernism. The generative AI can treat only mechanical information. It is the role of so-called data science to process a large amount of data statistically and improve business efficiency irrelevant to the imagination of living things. At present, data science is seen to be the most important intelligence of the 21st century. This is because AI is believed to build up the real world by data processing. But actually, it can simply build up a pseudo-reality, which is favorable to some selected people through statistical processing. Can we regard the intelligence sought by data science as the intelligence for diverse human beings or animals to survive? If meaning is created by each living thing, the AI unrelated to meaning could hardly be expected to produce answers to the questions for survival. Rather, it is likely to produce answers on the implicit assumption that a few privileged elite make use of ordinary people through treating them as machine parts. In spite of that, many people are becoming familiar with an interactive generative AI, and they trust it. So it may conduct human communications by plausible statements, pause propagation, and finally change values. The problem is lying here. Western modern intelligence, since its origin, has regarded the nature as something human beings can control and exploit. Here, the nature represents not only stars in the sky or global environment, but also human bodies and minds. And it goes without saying that generative AI constitutes a cutting-edge element of such Western modern intelligence. Even though the generative AI seems to have autonomy, it is basically a heteronomous machine operating as ordered, freely controlled by a few elite. It is quite likely that they will try to manipulate AI in order to realize favorable social values and semantic structures. This is nothing but the evil informatic turn to be criticized right now. Then, how can we cause a desirable change? Answering to this question is not an easy task, but a traditional Oriental worldview based on Buddhism might offer a hint, as it is fundamentally different from the Western monotheistic Jewish-Christian worldview. Such a research concerns very wide academic areas, including many issues. So in this lecture, I cannot talk about them in detail. But before concluding this lecture, let me introduce a few points. The FY, fundamental informatics, we are working on is based on autopoiesis system theory. It is widely known that Francisco Varela, one of its founders, was interested in the thought of early Mahayana Buddhism. He especially kept his eyes on the argument of emptiness or non-being spoken by Nagarjuna, a famous priest thinker of South India in the 2nd to 3rd century. This argument denies the Western epistemology to recognize independent entities in the world, but it is not the nihilism regarding the world as vacant. It is a way of thinking that everything is interconnected and having dependence or co-arising relations with each other. Any subject and object work together dynamically in emerging states. This is quite distant from the Western modern idea, including AI, that a human being as a subject objectively observes the world based on the distinction between the subject and an object. Such an Oriental old thought have had great influences on Asian cultures. For example, in haiku, Japanese short poetry, the composer, the creator, is seldom expressed as a subject. This omission comes not from the word length limit of the haiku, but from the deep feeling not to distinguish between a subject and an object. The composer melts into the whole world through living experiences. If we consider the values in the 20th century, the symbiotic idea respecting diverse human beings, animals, and plants in the global environment, which is exactly the desirable informatic turn should bring about, the argument of emptiness for non-being might be helpful for its realization. At least a broader range of investigation is necessary, exceeding the pursuit of nearsighted economic growth, if we hope to make truly preferable use of the generative AI. Thank you very much.